The billionaire's son sees a poor woman crying in the park and says, "Don't cry, I'll lend you my dad." What happens next is unbelievable. The park bench was cold. Claire Donovan didn't even notice. Her hands trembled, clutching the hospital papers. The death certificate was there, with her mother's name printed in official black letters. She was 27 years old and had nowhere in the world. The tears flowed relentlessly. It wasn't the beautiful movie-style crying. It was the kind of crying that hurts in the chest, that comes out in sobs, that makes a person double over and forget where they are. Claire didn't even try to hide it. The park was empty. It was mid-afternoon on a Tuesday. No one would see her there. Or so she thought. "Why are you crying?" The voice was thin, childlike. Claire raised her head and saw a small boy standing in front of her. He looked about 6, with messy brown hair and eyes too curious for the situation. Claire tried to wipe her face with the back of her hand. I'm fine." The boy tilted his head to the side. "You don't look it." Claire managed a weak smile. The kind of smile you force when you don't want to worry anyone. "Seriously, I'll be okay." The boy didn't move. He stood there, looking at her with that strange seriousness only children possess. "My name is Leo," he said. "What happened to you?" Claire hesitated. It made no sense to confide in a child. But maybe that was exactly why the words came out. "My mom died." Leo's eyes widened. "Really died?" Claire nodded slowly. "Just a few days ago." "What about your dad?" "I don't have one. Never did." "And siblings?" Claire shook her head. "No one. It was just me and her." Leo was silent for a moment. His eyes were bright, as if he understood her pain in a way adults couldn't. Then he took a step forward and took Claire's hand. His hand was small, warm, and took Claire completely by surprise. "Don't cry," he said, with the most serious voice a 6-year-old could manage. "I'll lend you my dad." Claire blinked. She thought she'd heard wrong. "What?" "I'll lend you my dad," Leo repeated, smiling a little now. "He's very good. He fixes everything. And you don't have anyone, so you can keep him for a little while." Claire felt something clench in her chest. It wasn't sadness. It was something else. Something warm and unexpected. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry more. "Leo, that's not how it works." "Why not?" he asked, tilting his head. "We lend things when someone needs them." "My dad said so." Claire opened her mouth to answer, but nothing came out. How do you explain to a child that life doesn't work that way? That people can't be lent out like toys or books? "Leo." The voice came from behind. Claire looked up and saw a man approaching. He was tall, wearing a simple shirt and jeans, but there was something about his posture that drew attention. He walked with confidence, with control. "I'm sorry," the man said, coming closer. "My son sometimes gets too involved with people." Claire quickly tried to compose herself. "No, it's fine. He was very kind." The man looked at Leo, then at Claire. He noticed her red eyes, the crumpled papers in her hand, the slumped posture of someone carrying an invisible weight. "Matthew Carter," he introduced himself, extending his hand. Claire shook it slowly. "Claire Donovan." Matthew sat on the bench next to her, without asking permission, but in a way that didn't feel intrusive. Leo climbed onto his lap immediately. "Daddy, Claire lost her mum," Leo said, quietly now, as if sharing an important secret. Matthew looked at Claire. There was no pity in his gaze. There was something more human, understanding, perhaps. "And I'm sorry," he said simply. Claire nodded. She couldn't speak. "And now she doesn't have anyone," Leo continued, placing his small hand on his father's face to ensure his attention. "That's why I said I'd lend you to her." Matthew gave a half smile. "Is that what you said?" "It is," Leo confirmed, proudly. "Because you fix everything, remember?" "You said so." Matthew looked at Claire again. There was something about him that made her feel less judged, less invisible. "Unfortunately, I don't fix everything," he said, but his voice was gentle. Claire let out a tired sigh. "No one does." They were silent for a few seconds. It wasn't awkward silence. It was the kind of silence that happens when two strangers share something heavy without needing to explain. Leo swung his legs, looking up at the sky. "Daddy, can we take Claire to get juice?" Matthew looked at his son. then at Claire. "Do you want to?" he asked. "It doesn't have to be formal. There's a coffee shop right around the corner." Coffee, water, anything." Claire hesitated. Part of her wanted to refuse, but another part, the exhausted, broken part, just wanted to accept any gesture of kindness. "Okay," she murmured. Matthew stood up, with Leo still clinging to him. "Let's go then." They walked slowly to the coffee shop. Leo wouldn't stop talking. He talked about school, about the park, about the dog he wanted to get. Claire barely responded, but the sound of his voice was comforting. Matthew ordered 2 coffees and an orange juice for Leo. They sat at a small plastic table outside. Claire held the coffee cup with both hands, feeling the warmth. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Matthew asked, directly but not rudely. Claire looked at the papers she had left on the table. "I have an apartment, for now." "For now," she shrugged. "The rent is overdue. I missed a lot of work because of my mom. I think I'm going to be fired soon, if I haven't been already." Matthew didn't say anything, he just listened. "I know it sounds pathetic," Claire continued, her voice low. "Dad, but I really don't know what to do now. It was just me and her, it always was." "It doesn't sound pathetic," Matthew said, looking directly at her. "It sounds human." Claire felt a knot in her throat. No one had spoken to her like that since everything happened. Everyone felt pity, or avoided the subject, but Matthew was simply there. "Thank you," she murmured. Leo noisily drank his juice, swinging his legs and watching people pass by. "Claire, are you coming back to the park?" he suddenly asked. She blinked. I don't know." "Come back," Leo pleaded, turning his little face to her. "Then we can talk again, and I'll lend you my dad whenever you need him." Claire felt a pang in her chest. She didn't expect to feel this. She didn't expect a 6-year-old boy could make such a difference. "I'll try," she said, and this time she wasn't lying. Matthew placed some bills on the table and stood up. "We have to go, but if you need anything, I'm at the park almost every afternoon with him." Claire nodded. "Thank you, really, for everything." Leo climbed off his father's lap and ran to Claire. He hugged her quickly, tightly, with that disproportionate strength children have. "Bye, Claire. Come back tomorrow." She waved, her voice caught in her throat. Matthew gave a nod and walked away with his son. Claire watched them walk until they disappeared around the corner. Claire sat there for a few more minutes. The coffee grew cold in front of her. The hospital papers were still on the table, but something had changed. She was still alone, still broken. But for the first time in days, she didn't feel like she was going to completely collapse. She stood up, picked up the papers, and walked slowly back home. And for the first time since her mother died, Claire Donovan was able to breathe. Because someone, even if it was a 6-year-old child, had told her she didn't have to be alone, and that, somehow, was enough for now. Claire woke up to her alarm clock ringing for the 3rd time. It was 8:30 in the morning. She should have been at the office at 8. Again. She turned off the alarm and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The bed felt like it weighed a ton. Getting up seemed impossible, but the bills wouldn't pay themselves. Claire forced herself to sit up, took a quick shower, put on the first clothes she found, and rushed out. Breakfast was left behind. She wasn't even hungry anyway. The commute to work was automatic. Crowded subway, busy streets, grey building. Everything the same as always, but nothing felt the same. When she entered the office, it was already 9:15. The receptionist didn't even look at her. Some colleagues whispered quietly. Claire pretended not to notice. She sat at her desk, turned on the computer and tried to focus. She couldn't. The emails piled up. Messages flashed on the screen. But Claire didn't process anything. She read the same sentence 3 times and didn't understand it. Her mind was elsewhere. At the hospital, at the wake, in the death certificate that was still in her purse. Claire. She looked up. It was Amanda, her supervisor. "Can I speak to you?" Claire nodded and stood up. She followed Amanda to the meeting room. The door closed behind them. Amanda sat down. Claire remained standing. "Sit," Amanda said, but it wasn't an invitation, it was an order. Claire obeyed. "Look, Claire, I know you're going through a difficult time." Claire said nothing. But we need to talk about your absences and the late arrivals. Claire clenched her hands in her lap. I know. I'm trying. You missed 7 days in the last 2 weeks, Amanda interrupted, and you were late for the other 4. That's affecting the team. It's affecting the deadlines. My mom died, Claire said, the voice coming out harsher than she intended. I know, and I'm really sorry, truly, Amanda sighed. But the company can't continue like this. We've talked about this before. Claire felt her stomach drop. You're firing me! Amanda didn't answer immediately. She just looked at her hands. The decision has been made. I'm sorry. Claire was silent. She had nothing to say. She had no strength to argue. She wasn't even surprised. She knew this was coming. You can gather your things now. HR will contact you about your final payments. Claire stood up slowly. She left the room without looking back. Back at her desk, she began gathering her belongings. It wasn't much. A mug, a notepad, a photo of her mother she kept in the drawer. Someone from HR brought a cardboard box. Claire placed everything inside. Some people watched. Others avoided looking. No one said anything. Claire picked up the box and walked to the exit. The weight wasn't from the objects, it was from everything that box represented. Now she had no job. She had no stability. She had no mother. She had nothing. The street was sunny when she walked out. People rushed by, heading for lunch. Life went on for everyone, except for her. Claire stood on the sidewalk, holding the box. She didn't know where to go back to the empty apartment, sit alone and face reality. She started walking, without direction, just walking. The streets passed by, the stores, the shop windows. Everything seemed unreal, as if she were watching her own life from the outside. After almost an hour of walking, Claire stopped. She looked around and realized where she was. The park. She hadn't even thought about coming here. But her feet brought her anyway. Claire walked in slowly. The bench where she had cried a few days ago was empty. She sat down, placed the box beside her, and took a deep breath. What was she going to do now? The hospital bills were still outstanding. Her mother's treatment had cost everything she had saved, and more. She had put it on her credit card in installments, taken out loans, done the impossible to pay. And now, the rent was overdue. The credit card bill was due. She had enough savings for maybe 1 more month, 2 if she ate poorly. After that, nothing. Claire leaned her head back on the bench and closed her eyes. She didn't cry, she had no more tears. She was just tired, so tired. Claire. She opened her eyes. Leo was running towards her, smiling widely. Matthew followed close behind, walking more slowly. You came back. Leo stopped in front of her, breathless. I knew you would. Claire tried to smile. Hi, Leo. Matthew approached. He looked at the box beside Claire, then at her face. Is everything okay? He asked. Claire looked at the box too. I was fired. Matthew said nothing. He just nodded slowly. Leo looked at the box, then at Claire. What's in there? My stuff from work. Are you going to get another job? Claire shrugged. I'll try. Leo climbed onto the bench beside her. My dad can help you. He knows everyone. Matthew gave a half smile. It's not quite like that, Leo. But you do know people, Leo insisted. You always say you know important people. Matthew looked at Claire. There was something in his eyes. It wasn't pity. It was something else. Something close to respect. If you need references, I can try to help, he said. I don't promise anything, but I can see what I can do. Claire shook her head. You've already done too much. You don't need to... It's not about needing, Matthew interrupted her. It's about wanting. Claire was silent. She didn't know how to respond. Leo began swinging his legs, looking up at the sky. Daddy, can we bring Claire home just so she doesn't feel sad alone? Matthew laughed softly. It doesn't work like that, champ. Why not? Because Claire has her own home. But she's sad. Matthew looked at Claire again. Do you want to come get a coffee again? Claire hesitated. But then she looked at the box, at the empty park. At the life that was crumbling. Yes, she said. I do. Matthew picked up the box for her. Leo took Claire's hand, and the 3 of them walked together to the coffee shop. Claire didn't know what would happen tomorrow. She didn't know how she would pay the bills. She didn't know if she would get another job, but in that moment she wasn't alone, and that was something. 3 days after being fired, Claire returned to the park. She had no specific reason to be there, no appointment, nothing to do, in fact. But staying home was worse. The apartment walls seemed to be closing in. The silence was too heavy. So she left, and without realizing it, her feet led her back to the same bench. The sun was strong. A few children played on the playground. Mothers talked sitting on the grass. Everything so normal, so light. Claire sat down and watched. She tried not to think about the bills, the collection emails, the rent due in a week. She tried just to exist for a few minutes. "Claire!" The shout came from across the park. Claire looked up and saw Leo running toward her. He was sprinting, his short legs moving fast, a huge smile on his face. She couldn't help it. A small smile appeared on her lips too. Leo stopped in front of her, breathless. "I knew it," he said, breathing heavily. "I told my dad you'd come back." Claire laughed softly. "Hi, Leo." "Hi." He climbed onto the bench next to her without ceremony. "Dad, did you bring that box again?" "No, not today." "That's good. That box was sad." Claire blinked. "Sad?" "Yeah, it looked like sad stuff." Leo swung his legs. "My dad said you lost your job." "I did, but you're going to get another one, right?" Claire shrugged. "I hope so." Leo looked at her with that strange childlike seriousness. "What can you do?" "I used to work with numbers, spreadsheets, that kind of thing." Leo made a face. "Boring." Claire laughed. It was a genuine laugh, short but real. "It is kind of boring." "Then get a cool job," Leo suggested, as if it was simple. "Like a lion tamer." Claire raised an eyebrow. "A lion tamer?" "Yeah, or an astronaut." "Or a detective." Leo cheered up. "I want to be a detective when I grow up. Or a firefighter. I haven't decided yet." "Why a detective?" "Because they find lost things," Leo explained. "And they solve mysteries, like who ate the last cookie? Important stuff like that." Claire couldn't hold it in. She laughed, a real laugh. The kind of laugh that comes from the stomach, that makes your shoulders shake. Leo smiled, proud. "You laughed." "I did," Claire confirmed, still smiling. "You look pretty now." Claire felt something clench in her chest, but it wasn't bad. It was strange. Good strange. "Thank you, Leo." He swung his legs faster. "You know what I did yesterday?" "What?" "I tried to teach my dad to make slime, but it went super wrong. It got sticky all over the table. He got mad." "Did he?" "Not really," Leo admitted. "He never really gets mad. He just makes that, 'Leo, what have you done?' face." Leo imitated a serious expression that made Claire laugh again. Matthew appeared, walking slowly towards them. He was holding 2 cups of juice. "Thought you might be thirsty," he said, holding out a cup to Claire. She accepted it. "Thank you." Matthew sat on the other side of the bench, leaving Leo in the middle. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, drinking his own juice. "Daddy, I was telling Claire about the slime." "Ah, the slime disaster," Matthew said, giving a half smile. "It wasn't a disaster. It was an experiment," Leo defended. "An experiment that got stuck to the floor, the table, and your hair." Claire laughed again. Leo crossed his arms. "Science is like that. You have to try." Matthew looked at Claire. There was something in his gaze. Satisfaction, perhaps, as if he was happy to see her laughing. "He always has an excuse," Matthew commented. "It's not an excuse. It's an explanation," Leo corrected. "My school teacher said it's different." Claire took a sip of the juice. It was orange, fresh. She couldn't even remember the last time she had real juice. "Claire, do you like to draw?" Leo suddenly asked. So, why?" "Because I'm very good at it. I can teach you." "You're good?" "Super good," Leo guaranteed. "My dinosaur drawing is on the school wall." "Really? Really? The teacher said it was amazing, and she doesn't lie. Adults can't lie." Matthew laughed softly. "Some adults lie, champ." "The bad ones," Leo said. "But the teacher is good." Claire watched the boy speak. He had so much energy, so much certainty. Everything was simple for him. Black or white, good or bad. She missed that when things seemed easier. "Leo, can I ask you a question?" Claire said. "How can? How do you manage to be so happy all the time?" Leo thought for a moment. "I don't know, I just am." "No secret?" "Yes," Leo said, seriously. "The secret is not to be sad for too long, because then you miss the cool stuff." Claire blinked. That was so simple, so obvious, but at the same time, so hard. "You're very wise for 6 years old." "I know," Leo agreed, with no modesty. Matthew shook his head, laughing softly. "And humble, too." "What is humble?" Leo asked. "Never mind." Leo turned his attention back to Claire. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" Claire hesitated. "I don't know." "Come back," Leo pleaded. "Then I can show you my dragon drawing." "It's in my backpack. I forgot to bring it today." Claire looked at Matthew. He gave a slight nod, as if to say, "It's fine." "All right," Claire said. "I'll come back." "Promise?" "I promise." Leo smiled widely and jumped off the bench. "I'm going to play on the slide," he announced and ran off. Claire and Matthew were silent for a moment. She took another sip of the juice. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For letting him talk to me. For not finding it strange." Matthew looked at Leo, who was now climbing the slide. "He likes you, and honestly, I think you need this as much as he does." Claire didn't answer. She didn't need to. She stayed there for another half hour, watched Leo play, talked to Matthew about small things, nothing deep, nothing heavy. And when she left, Claire realized something. She had laughed, really laughed. For the first time since her mother died, she had felt something akin to lightness. It didn't last long. As soon as she got home, reality returned. The bills, the rent, the uncertain future. But those minutes in the park had been enough. They had given her breath. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep going for one more day. Claire woke up early the following Monday. She had a list in her hand and determination in her chest. She was going to find a job. She had to find one. She spent the entire morning updating her resume, created accounts on 3 different job sites, sent applications for 15 vacancies, then left the house with printed resumes in her bag. The first stop was an accounting firm downtown. The receptionist took the resume without really looking. "We'll review it and get in touch." Claire thanked her and left. She went to the next company, then another, and another. Always the same answer. "We'll be in touch. We'll review it. You'll hear back." By the end of the day, Claire had handed out 12 resumes. Her feet hurt. Her throat was dry, but she felt a little better. At least she was trying. In the following days, the responses began to arrive. The first email came on Tuesday. "Unfortunately, at this time, we do not have a position that fits your profile. Thank you for your interest." The second came on Wednesday. "We have decided to proceed with other candidates. Good luck with your search." The third on Thursday. The position was filled internally. Claire tried not to get discouraged. She sent more resumes, 20 this time. She managed to get 2 interviews. The first was at a small marketing company. The interviewer was friendly. He asked standard questions. Claire answered as best she could. At the end, he smiled. "We'll give you feedback by the end of the week." The feedback never came. The second interview was at a startup. The office was modern, full of young people. Claire felt out of place, too old, too tired. The interviewer asked quick questions, looked at her phone twice during the conversation. Great. "We'll be in touch." Claire knew she wouldn't receive a call, and she didn't. Weeks passed. More resumes, more short interviews, more vague answers. "So you have an interesting profile, but unfortunately the position requires more experience in, we'll keep your resume in our database." Claire began to feel invisible, as if she was screaming inside an empty room. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. First came the credit card statement. The amount was absurd. The interest had doubled. Claire paid the minimum. It was all she could do. Then came the electricity bill. She paid it, but she fell behind on the rent to manage it. The phone rang the following Tuesday. It was the landlord. "Claire, the rent is overdue." "I know. Sorry. I'll pay it this week." "You said that last week." "I know," Claire repeated, gripping the phone. "But I'm looking for a job." "I just need a few more days," the landlord sighed. "Claire, I like you, but I can't wait forever. I have bills too." "I know. I promise I'll settle it by the end of the week. Otherwise, I'll have to take steps." The call ended. Claire stood there looking at her phone. Steps. She knew what that meant. Eviction. Fear began to tighten its grip. It was no longer a distant worry. It was something real. Something that could actually happen. Claire tried harder, sent more resumes, called companies, followed up on leads, contacted acquaintances she had lost touch with years ago. Nothing. Sorry, I don't have anything right now. I'll ask around, but I don't promise anything." Good luck. Everyone wished her good luck. No one offered anything concrete. Claire began applying for jobs that had nothing to do with her field. Waitress, cashier, receptionist, anything. The responses remained the same. She was overqualified, or she didn't have experience, or the position was already filled. There was always a reason. On Friday, Claire was sitting on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by bills. She had calculated everything 3 times. No matter how she did the math, the result was always the same. She wouldn't be able to pay everything. She would have to choose rent or food, electricity or water, credit card or phone. She couldn't pay everything. Claire leaned her head against the wall and closed her eyes. She was so tired. It wasn't just physical fatigue. It was something else. A deeper kind of exhaustion. The kind that sleep doesn't fix. She felt as if she were pushing against a wall, putting all her strength into it, sweating, bleeding, and the wall didn't move an inch. The phone rang. Claire looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. She answered quickly. "Hello?" "Hi, Claire. This is HR Solutions. You applied for the administrative assistant position." Claire's heart raced. Yes, I did." "Unfortunately, the position has been filled, but thank you for your interest." Claire didn't answer. The woman on the other end waited a few seconds. "Claire." "Yes, thank you for calling." She hung up before her voice failed. Claire sat there on the floor, holding the phone. She looked at the bills scattered around, at the empty apartment, at the life that was falling apart. And for the first time since she started looking for a job, she felt like giving up. Not dying. It wasn't that. It was just stopping trying, stopping fighting, stopping pushing the damn wall that wouldn't budge. But then she thought of Leo, his smile, the way he held her hand and said silly things that made everything feel lighter. Claire took a deep breath. She stood up, picked up the bills, separated what was urgent from what could wait, paid the rent, left the rest for later. At least this week she wouldn't be evicted. The following week she would try again, send more resumes, go to more interviews, receive more rejections, but she wouldn't give up. Not yet, because if she gave up now, the wall won. And Claire Donovan wasn't ready to let that happen. Claire spent the whole week balancing resumes and rejections. Each day felt heavier than the last. Every negative response hurt a little more. On Thursday afternoon, after receiving 3 more emails saying, "Unfortunately, we've decided to proceed with other candidates," she couldn't stand being home anymore. The apartment walls were closing in. The silence was suffocating. The bills on the table seemed to scream. Claire grabbed her purse and left. She didn't plan where to go, but her feet knew. 15 minutes later, she was entering the park. The sun was starting to go down. The golden afternoon light made everything softer. Some children played on the playground. Parents talked on scattered benches. Dogs ran free. Claire walked to the bench, the usual one. She sat down and closed her eyes for a moment. It was different here. Here she could breathe. There were no demands in this place, no overdue bills, no interviewers looking at her with pity, no negative answers. Here, for a few minutes, she could just exist. Claire opened her eyes and looked around. She searched without realizing it. She looked for a 6-year-old boy with messy hair and a wide smile. Leo. In the last few days, he had become something important. More than she expected. More than made sense. He was the only moment of lightness she had. The only thing that made her truly smile. the only reminder that there were still good things in the world. He was, somehow, her silent strength. Claire couldn't quite explain it. But when she was near him, everything felt less impossible, as if the weight lessened just a bit, enough for her to keep going. She sat there, waiting. She didn't know if he would come. She didn't even know what time he usually showed up. But it didn't matter. Just being there helped. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Claire began to think maybe he wouldn't come today. Maybe he had an appointment. Maybe he didn't come to the park every day. But then she heard it. "Claire!" She looked to the side. Leo was running toward her, his arms swinging, his face lit up with happiness. Claire felt something warm in her chest. She smiled. Before she even realized it, before she even decided to, the smile came by itself. Leo stopped in front of her, breathless. "You came back," he said, his voice excited. "I thought you weren't coming anymore." "Why did you think that?" Claire asked. "Because you haven't been here for a few days. I was worried." Claire felt her chest tighten. "You were worried." "I was." Leo nodded, seriously. "I thought you had left. Like, far away." "No, I was just busy." Leo climbed onto the bench next to her. "With the new job?" Claire hesitated. "I'm still looking." "Oh." Leo swung his legs. "Is it hard?" "It is." "But you haven't given up, right?" Claire looked at him, at those eyes full of confidence, of certainty. "No, I haven't given up." "That's good," Leo smiled. "Because my dad always says we can't give up, even when it's hard." Claire gave a half smile. "Your dad is right. He always is," Leo said without modesty. "It's annoying sometimes, but he is." Matthew appeared, walking slowly. He was holding a paper bag. "I found you," he said, approaching. Leo jumped off the bench. "Daddy, Claire is back." "I see." Matthew smiled. He looked at Claire. "Everything okay?" Claire nodded. "Yes, just needed to get out of the house." Matthew understood. She saw it in his eyes. He didn't ask anything else. He just sat on the bench, placed the bag on his lap and opened it. "I bought some sandwiches. Want one?" Claire was about to refuse. But then she realized she hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. And breakfast had just been toast. "I do, thank you." Matthew handed a sandwich to her and one to Leo. He took the third for himself. They ate in silence for a few minutes. It wasn't uncomfortable silence, it was peaceful, natural. Leo finished first and ran off to the playground. Claire and Matthew stayed on the bench. "You come here a lot now," Matthew commented. Claire looked at her hands. "It's the only place where I can find peace." Matthew turned his head to her. He waited. Claire continued, her voice low. "At home it's suffocating. The bills, the rejections, everything seems so impossible. But here..." She took a deep breath. "Here I can breathe," Matthew nodded slowly. "I understand." "And Leo?" Claire gave a half smile. "He helps me. I can't quite explain it. But when he says those silly things of his, I forget the rest for a moment." Matthew looked at his son, who was now trying to climb the slide the wrong way. "He really likes you," Matthew said. "And he talks about you almost every day." Claire's eyes widened. "Seriously, seriously, he asks if you're coming back. He's happy when he sees you. You've become important to him." Claire felt something clench in her throat. "He's important to me too." Matthew was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, choosing his words carefully. "Claire, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I see that it's not easy." She didn't answer. "If you need anything at all, you can tell me." Claire looked at him. "You already do too much. Just letting me sit here and talk to you both. It's more than I deserve." "It's not about deserving," Matthew said, firm but gentle. "It's about being human." Claire felt her eyes sting. She blinked quickly, holding back the tears. "Thank you," she murmured. Leo ran back. "Claire, come play with me." Claire discreetly wiped the corners of her eyes. "Play what?" "Hide and seek. You count and I hide." Claire looked at Matthew. He shrugged, smiling. "Go on, I'll stay here." Claire stood up. Leo was already running off, laughing loudly. "Count to 20." Claire leaned against a tree trunk and started counting out loud. She heard Leo's footsteps fading. She heard him laugh. She heard life happening around her. And for a few minutes, she didn't think about anything else. She didn't think about the bills. She didn't think about the rejections. She didn't think about the uncertain future. She just played. When she reached 20, she started looking. Leo was hiding behind a bush, laughing to himself. Claire pretended not to see him. "Where could he be?" she said out loud, looking the opposite way. Leo laughed louder. Claire turned and ran to him. "Found you!" Leo screamed with joy and ran off. They played for another half hour. They ran, they laughed, they forgot the world. When they finally stopped, Claire was out of breath, but she was smiling, really smiling. Matthew watched from afar, leaning against the bench. There was something in his gaze, satisfaction, perhaps, or understanding. He had realized that his son had become her emotional support, that those moments in the park were the only thing keeping Claire going, and he wouldn't take that away from her. When the sun began to set, Leo yawned. "I think it's time to go," Matthew said. Leo pouted. "Already?" "Already. You have school early tomorrow." Leo looked at Claire. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" Claire looked at Matthew. He nodded slightly. "I'll come back. Promise?" "I promise." Leo smiled and hugged Claire quickly. Then he ran to his father. Matthew approached. "We'll see you tomorrow." Claire nodded. "See you tomorrow." She watched them walk away. Leo waved until they disappeared from sight. Claire stayed there for a few more minutes, looking at the park, feeling the breeze, breathing. When she finally went home, the bills were still there. The problems still existed. But she had managed to breathe, and that was enough for today. The knock on the door came at 9 on a Friday morning. Claire was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. She knew who it was before she even opened it. She got up slowly, walked to the door, opened it. The landlord was there, accompanied by a court officer. "Claire," the landlord said, his voice emotionless, "you have 2 hours to vacate." Claire didn't answer. She just nodded. She had received the warnings. She had seen the notifications. She knew this day would come. But knowing didn't make it easier. The landlord waited a few seconds, then turned and left. The officer stayed, leaning against the hallway wall. Claire closed the door. She looked at the apartment. It wasn't big, it wasn't luxurious, but it was hers. Or it had been. She started gathering her things. It wasn't much. Clothes, some books, the photo of her mother, documents. She put everything into a suitcase. The same suitcase she had brought when she moved here years ago. 2 hours later, Claire was on the sidewalk. The officer locked the door, put a seal on it, left without looking back. Claire stood there, holding the suitcase. People passed on the street. Cars honked. Life went on, but hers had stopped. She had nowhere to go. She had no family, no friends close enough to ask for help. No money for a hotel. She had nothing. Claire started walking, without direction. Just walking. The suitcase was heavy. Her arms hurt, but she didn't stop. After almost an hour, she reached the park. She sat on the bench, the same one as always, placed the suitcase next to her and stared into space. She had failed. She had tried. God knew she had tried, but it wasn't enough. She couldn't get a job. She couldn't pay the bills. She couldn't keep her home. She achieved nothing. Claire leaned her head back on the bench and closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She was too tired to cry. "Claire." She opened her eyes. Leo was in front of her, his eyes wide. "You brought the suitcase again," he said, his voice quiet. Claire tried to smile. She couldn't. "I did." "Why?" Claire took a deep breath. "Because I don't have a home anymore, Leo." Leo blinked. "What do you mean you don't have a home anymore? I was evicted. I couldn't pay the rent." Leo looked at the suitcase, then at Claire. He took a step forward and held her hand. The warm little hand squeezed tightly. "Now what?" Claire shrugged. "I don't know." Leo was silent for a moment. Then he looked back, where Matthew was approaching. "Daddy!" Leo called, waving. Matthew came closer, looked at Claire, at the suitcase, at the expression on her face. He understood immediately. "What happened?" he asked, his voice calm. "I was evicted," Claire said directly. "I couldn't pay the rent. I tried, but it didn't work." Matthew sat next to her on the bench. "Where are you going now?" Claire looked at her hands. "I don't know. I'm still thinking." "Do you have anywhere at all?" She shook her head. "No." Leo squeezed Claire's hand harder. "Daddy, Claire doesn't have a home," he said, worried. "What is she going to do?" Matthew looked at his son, then at Claire. "Claire," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "you can come with us." Claire quickly lifted her head. "What?" "Come with us," Leo repeated, excited. "To our house." Claire shook her head. "No, I can't do that. You've already done too much." "Claire," Matthew said, tilting his head to look into her eyes, "you don't have to go through this alone, but I can't. I have no way to pay, no way to repay. I don't—" "No one is asking for payment," Matthew interrupted her. "You need a place where we have space. It's that simple." "It's not simple," Claire said, her voice breaking. "You barely know me. Why would you do this?" Matthew was silent for a moment, then he spoke, slowly, "Because it's the right thing to do." Leo tugged on Claire's hand. "Please, come, then you won't be alone, and I like you." Claire felt her eyes sting. She blinked quickly, but the tears came anyway. "I can't accept that," she murmured. "So it's not fair to you." "Claire," Matthew said, his voice firmer now, "look at me." She looked. "You're alone, homeless, jobless, with no one," he continued. "I know you have pride. I know you don't want to depend on anyone, but sometimes we need to accept help, and there's nothing wrong with that." Claire wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "What if I can't get out of this? What if I can never pay you back?" "Then you never pay," Matthew shrugged. "It doesn't matter." "How does it not matter?" "Because it's not about money," he said simply. "It's about doing the right thing. About not leaving someone on the street when you can help." Leo swung Claire's arm. "Come on, Claire." "Please." Claire looked at the boy, at his worried little face, at his small hand holding hers so tightly. Then she looked at Matthew, at his sincere expression, at the genuine offer. She had no choice. She had nowhere to go. She had no one. But more than that, she was tired. Tired of fighting alone. Tired of pretending she could manage. Tired of pushing walls that wouldn't move. Claire took a deep breath. "All right," she murmured. Leo smiled widely. "Seriously, seriously." Leo jumped up and hugged Claire tightly. She closed her eyes and hugged him back. Matthew stood up and picked up the suitcase. "Let's go." Claire stood up too. Her legs were weak. Her body was heavy. But she walked. They left the park together. Leo held Claire's hand. Matthew carried the suitcase. Claire looked back once, at the bench, at the park that had become her refuge, but now she had another place. It wasn't hers. It wasn't permanent, but it was a place. And in that moment, it was all she had. Claire turned forward and kept walking, beside Matthew and Leo. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't completely alone. And that, in a strange and frightening way, was a new beginning. The car stopped in front of a tall gate. Matthew pressed a button on the dashboard, and the gate opened automatically. Claire looked out the window, her eyes widened. The house was enormous. It wasn't a house. It was a mansion, 3 stories. Huge windows, impeccable garden, a fountain out front. Claire felt her stomach clench. "Matthew," she started, her voice weak. "We're here," he said, parking in the garage. Leo jumped out of the car, excited. "Come on, Claire, I'll show you everything." Claire got out slowly. She looked around. The garage held 4 cars, all expensive, shiny. Matthew took her suitcase from the trunk. "Let's go inside." Claire followed in silence. Every step felt wrong. She didn't belong in this place. It didn't make sense for her to be here. They entered through the side door. The hallway was wide. The floor was marble. Paintings on the walls. Everything clean. Everything perfect. Claire stopped in the middle of the hallway. "Matthew, I can't stay here." He turned to her. "Why?" "Because—" Claire gestured around. "All of this, I don't deserve it." Matthew put the suitcase on the floor. "Claire, it's just a house." "It's not just a house," she said, her voice rising slightly. "It's a mansion. You have money, a lot of money, and I'm nobody." Leo tugged on Claire's hand. "You're not nobody, you're Claire." Claire looked at the boy. Her eyes stung. Matthew took a step forward. "Claire, listen, I have money. Yes, but that doesn't change anything. You need help. I can help. It's simple." "It's not simple," Claire murmured. "You don't know me. You don't know who I am." "Why would you do this?" "Because Leo likes you," Matthew said, looking at his son. "Because you seem like a good person who's going through a bad time, and because I can." Claire was silent. She didn't know what to say. Leo tugged her hand again. "Come on, I'll show you your room." Claire let Leo guide her. They climbed a wide staircase, passed through a hallway with several doors. Leo stopped at the last one. "This one," he opened the door. The room was large, bigger than Claire's entire apartment living room. It had a double bed, a wardrobe, a desk, an armchair by the window. Everything clean, everything organized. Claire walked in slowly. "Is this it?" she asked, her voice low. "That is," Leo confirmed. "Do you like it?" Claire looked around. There was an ensuite bathroom. Clean towels were already hanging. New soap in the sink. It's beautiful," she murmured. Matthew appeared at the door with the suitcase. "I'll leave this here." He placed the suitcase near the bed. "If you need anything, my room is at the end of the hall. Leo's is the second on the left." Claire nodded, speechless. "We'll let you settle in," Matthew said. "Then we'll have dinner together, okay?" "Okay." Leo waved and ran off. Matthew gave a half smile and closed the door. Claire was left alone in the room. She sat on the edge of the bed. The springs were soft, comfortable. Nothing like the thin mattress she had before. Claire looked at her own hands. They were trembling. She was in a mansion, in a billionaire's house. A man she barely knew, with a son who had become attached to her. None of this made sense. But it was happening. Claire opened the suitcase and began taking out her clothes. She put everything in the wardrobe. It didn't even fill half the space. Then she took a shower. The hot water came down hard. There was expensive shampoo, conditioner, scented liquid soap. Claire stayed under the water for a long time, letting the warmth relax her muscles, letting the tension wash away. When she got out, she put on clean clothes and went downstairs. The house was quiet. Claire walked slowly, trying not to make noise. She passed the enormous living room, the dining room. She reached the kitchen, and she stopped. The kitchen was impeccable. Marble countertop, modern appliances, everything gleaming. But there were dishes in the sink. Claire looked around. Matthew and Leo weren't nearby. She heard voices upstairs. Without thinking much, Claire went to the sink. She started washing the dishes, glasses, plates, pans. It was automatic. She needed to do something. She needed to feel useful. She needed to repay them somehow. After washing, she dried everything and put it away. Cleaned the sink, wiped the countertop, swept the floor. She was finishing when she heard footsteps. "Claire." She turned. Matthew was standing at the kitchen doorway, looking at her. "What are you doing?" he asked. I was cleaning," Claire said, holding the cloth. Matthew walked into the kitchen. "Claire, you don't have to do this. I know. But I wanted to. You're helping me. I need to do something in return." Matthew stopped in front of her. He looked into her eyes. "You don't need to prove anything." Claire shook her head. "I do. I can't just stay here, doing nothing, not contributing." "You're going through a difficult time," Matthew said, his voice calm. "No one expects you to do anything right now." "But I need to," Claire insisted, her voice breaking. "I need to feel like I'm doing something, that I'm not just a burden." Matthew sighed. "You are not a burden." "Yes, I am. I'm taking up space, eating food, using water. You're someone who needs help, Matthew interrupted her. And there's nothing wrong with that. Claire clenched the cloth in her hands. I hate this. I hate depending on anyone. I know, Matthew said gently. But sometimes we don't have a choice, and it's okay. It doesn't feel right. It feels human, he corrected. Everyone needs help at some point. It doesn't make you less, it makes you human. Claire felt her eyes sting. She blinked quickly. I'll keep looking for a job, I promise. And as soon as I get one, I'll leave. I'll pay everything back. It's not about that, Matthew said. You can stay as long as you need. No pressure, no obligation. Claire didn't know what to say. No one had ever offered her anything like this, without expecting anything in return, without judgment. Leo appeared at the door holding a sketchbook. Daddy, can I show Claire my drawings? Matthew looked at his son and smiled. You can, but first, let's have dinner. I'll make dinner, Claire offered quickly. Matthew raised an eyebrow. You cook? Yes. My mum taught me, Claire said. Please, let me do this. Matthew hesitated, then he nodded. All right. Claire felt a small sense of relief. At least this she could do. At least this she knew. What do you guys like to eat? She asked. Leo jumped up, excited. Spaghetti with meatballs. Claire smiled, a small but real smile. Spaghetti and meatballs I can do. She started looking for ingredients. Matthew showed her where everything was, then he left with Leo, leaving Claire alone in the kitchen. Claire worked in silence. Chopped onions, seasoned the meat, made the meatballs, put the sauce on the stove. As she cooked, she felt a little lighter. She wasn't healed, she wasn't fine, but she was in a safe place. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't have to fight alone. Help had arrived, and maybe, just maybe, she could accept it. The smell of tomato sauce filled the kitchen. Claire stirred the pot slowly, watching the meatballs cook in the red aromatic sauce. It was her mother's recipe, the same one she made every Friday when Claire was a child, the same one Claire had learned to make at 15, the same one she hadn't made since her mother died. But today it felt right. Claire strained the spaghetti and put it on the large plate, poured the sauce over it, garnished it with the meatballs and some basil leaves she found in the fridge. It was perfect, exactly as her mother made it. Dinner's ready, she called out. Leo came running from the living room, Matthew close behind. It smells so good, Leo said, climbing into his chair. Matthew helped his son get settled. Claire brought the plates and served each one. Her hands trembled slightly as she portioned the food. Enjoy, she said, sitting in the chair across from them. Leo picked up his fork and shoved a whole meatball into his mouth. He chewed with his eyes closed, swinging his legs under the table. It's delicious, he said with his mouth full. Leo, chew with your mouth closed, Matthew corrected, but he was smiling. Matthew picked up his fork, cut a piece of the meatball, took some spaghetti, and brought it to his mouth. He chewed slowly. He stopped. Claire watched his expression change. His eyes became distant. His jaw stopped for a second. He chewed more slowly, as if he were trying to identify something. Matthew, she asked, worried, is it bad? He shook his head, still chewing, swallowed slowly. No, he said, his voice strange. It's perfect. Claire tilted her head. Are you sure? You made a strange face. Matthew looked at her. There was something different in his gaze, something emotional. This reminds me of my childhood, he said softly. Claire blinked. How so? Matthew put his fork down on the plate, took another piece, tasted it again. That taste, that exact seasoning, he opened his eyes. There was a cook in the house where I grew up. She made meatballs exactly like this. Leo stopped eating. Just like this, Daddy. Exactly like this, Matthew confirmed. The same seasoning, the same sauce, even the smell is the same. Claire felt something strange in her chest. What a coincidence, she murmured. It is, Matthew agreed. I haven't eaten this in years, since I left my parents and house. He ate a little more, his eyes still distant, lost in old memories. She was amazing, Matthew continued. The cook. I spent hours in the kitchen with her when I was a kid. She let me help, taught me things. told me stories. He gave a half smile. My parents were always busy. Meetings, trips, important dinners. But she... He paused. She was like having a grandmother. She listened to me, treated me like I was important. Leo looked at his father. What was her name? Matthew thought for a moment. Margaret Donovan. Claire dropped her fork. The sound of the metal hitting the plate echoed through the kitchen. Matthew looked at her immediately. Claire? She was pale. Her hands trembled on the table. What did you say? She asked, her voice faint. Margaret Donovan, Matthew repeated, confused. Why? Claire stood up slowly. She walked to the living room with slow steps. She returned seconds later with her purse, opened it with trembling fingers, took out an old wallet. From inside, she pulled out a small, worn photograph. She placed the photo on the table in front of Matthew. Is that her? Claire asked, her voice shaking. Is that the person? Matthew picked up the photo. He looked. His eyes widened. My God, he murmured. It is her. In the photo, a blonde woman with light eyes smiled at the camera. She was in a kitchen, wearing an apron, holding a wooden spoon. She must have been about 40 in the photo. That's my mother, Claire said, her voice failing. Margaret Donovan. My mother. Matthew looked from the photo to Claire, slowly, then back to the photo. Your mother, he repeated. Your mother is Margaret Donovan. Claire nodded, her eyes filling with tears. She was. She died a few weeks ago. Matthew carefully put the photo down, ran his hand over his face. Claire, I didn't know. Your mother was one of the most important people in my childhood. Leo looked from one to the other. Daddy, you knew Claire's mom. Matthew nodded. I did. She worked at my parents' and house for years. From the time I was 5 until I was 15, He looked at Claire. She practically raised me. Claire sat down slowly, her legs weak. She never mentioned the names of the families she worked for, Claire said. She said it was agency policy, but I knew she cooked for rich people. Matthew picked up the photo again. She made this spaghetti every Friday, he said. I waited all week for it, and she always let me help make the meatballs. Claire wiped her tears. She taught me the same recipe. Said it was special, that she had learned it from her mother, that it was a family tradition. Matthew smiled, but it was a sad smile. She used to tell me stories while she cooked, old stories. I'd sit on the kitchen counter, listening to every word. She did that with me too, Claire said, smiling through her tears. Every Friday, the same thing. Matthew looked at Claire. He really looked. Her light eyes, the blonde hair, the shape of her face. You're exactly like her, he said softly. Claire nodded. Everyone used to say that. Matthew was silent. Then he asked, his voice careful. What happened to her? Claire took a deep breath. Cancer. It started 2 years ago. She fought, had treatment, but it wasn't enough. I'm sorry, Matthew said, and there was genuine pain in his voice. I'm truly sorry. I wish I had known. I wish I had a chance to see her again. To thank her. Thank her for what? For everything, Matthew said. For treating me kindly when my parents were always busy. For listening to me. For making me feel important when I was just a lonely kid in a huge house. He quickly wiped his eyes. My parents had money, a lot of money, but they didn't have time. And Margaret, she did. Claire felt her chest tighten. She talked about you, not by name, but she talked about a child she looked after, who was sweet, who liked to help in the kitchen. Claire gave a half smile. She said you were special. Matthew wiped his eyes again. She was special to me, he said. When I was 8, my parents almost divorced. The house was chaos, shouting, doors slamming, and Margaret, he paused. She would take me to the kitchen, make me hot chocolate, let me help make cookies. She protected me. Leo looked at his father, surprised. He had never seen his father cry. She saved that period for me, Matthew continued. Without her, I don't know how I would have gotten through it. Claire wiped more tears. She never told me that, but she always said she was proud of her work. That caring for children was more important than anything. Matthew looked at the photo again. What happened? Why did she leave? Claire sighed. She got pregnant with me. She was single, and the agency fired her. They said it wasn't appropriate. She got other jobs later, but never a fixed one in a household, just temporary work. Events. Whatever came up. Matthew pressed his lips together. My mother never told me why Margaret left, he said. She just said she had changed jobs. I cried for weeks. She cried too, Claire said. Years later, she told me, said she had become attached to a child in one of the houses, that it had been hard to leave without saying goodbye. Matthew looked at Claire. It was me, Claire nodded. It had to be. They were silent. Leo looked between the two. So you and Claire, are you like family? Leo asked. Matthew gave a half smile. Not exactly, but there's a connection. An important connection. He looked at Claire again. That's why, he said. That's why when I saw you on that bench crying, I couldn't just walk past. Something pulled me. Something told me to stop. Claire wiped her face. Do you think she knew, she asked, that it was you? Matthew shook his head. I don't know. Did she tell you my name? No, she never said names. Matthew sighed. Too bad, he said, his voice heavy. Too bad I didn't get a chance to see her alive, to thank her, to tell her how much she meant to me. Claire felt the tears fall harder. She would have liked to know, Claire said through sobs. She would have liked to know you remembered her. I never forgot, Matthew said. Never. And now I understand everything. Understand what? Why I felt this urge to help you. Why Leo became so attached to you. Why it felt right to bring you here. He gave a half smile. It's like a chance to repay her, to take care of the daughter of someone who took care of me. Claire couldn't hold back. She cried, really cried, sobbing. Matthew stood up and went to her. He placed his hand on her shoulder. Claire, you're not alone. You'll never be alone again. Leo got down from his chair and ran to Claire. He hugged her around the waist. We'll take care of you now, he said. Just like your mom took care of my dad. Claire hugged Leo back. Then she looked at Matthew. And for the first time since her mother died, she didn't feel lost. She felt found. The connection she didn't know existed had appeared. The circle had closed. Margaret Donovan had cared for Matthew when he was a child, and now, years later, Matthew was caring for her daughter. It was as if the universe had come full circle, and Claire finally had a place, a safe place, a place that made sense, a place that felt, in some strange and beautiful way, like home. Matthew pulled up a chair and sat next to Claire. Leo was still hugging her. You know what I think, Matthew said, his voice soft. Claire looked at him, her eyes red. I think your mom knew, he continued. Maybe not consciously, but somehow she knew. That's why she taught you that recipe. That's why she told the same stories. She was passing something on. Claire wiped her nose with a napkin. You think so? I do, Matthew said, looking at the photo. And I think she would be happy. Happy to know you're here, that we found each other. Claire looked at the photo of her mother, at her smile, at the light eyes that were just like hers. I miss her every day, Claire murmured. I know, Matthew said, but she's not completely gone. She's here, in this recipe, in those stories, in you. Leo lifted his head. And now she's here with us too, he said seriously, because Claire is here. Claire hugged Leo tighter, looked at Matthew, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something akin to peace. Dinner grew cold, but no one cared, because something much more important had happened at that table. A family had been formed, not by blood, not by last names, but by connection, by love, by care that crossed generations. And that, somehow, was stronger than anything else. The next morning, Claire woke up to the smell of coffee. She walked downstairs slowly, still getting used to the house. Matthew was in the kitchen, making pancakes. Leo was drawing at the table. Good morning, Claire said, shyly. Good morning, Leo yelled, excited. Did you sleep well? I did, Claire admitted. And it was true. For the first time in weeks, she had slept through the night. Matthew placed a plate of pancakes on the table. Sit down, Eat something. Claire obeyed. She took a pancake and started eating slowly. It was delicious. Matthew poured her coffee and sat across from her. Claire, I was thinking, he began. She looked at him, chewing. About what you said yesterday, about looking for a job. Claire nodded. I need to keep looking. I can't stay here doing nothing. I know, Matthew said, and I want to help you with that. Claire frowned. How so? Matthew took a sip of coffee. I have a friend, James. He has an accounting firm downtown, medium-sized business, about 50 employees. He was mentioning last week that he needs someone for the administrative area. Claire stopped chewing. Matthew, I can't ask you to... You're not asking, he interrupted her. I'm offering, and it's not a favor. You're qualified. You have experience. He needs someone. It makes sense. Claire put her fork down on the plate. But he'll hire me just because you asked. That's not fair. He'll interview you normally, Matthew explained. I'll just make the introduction. The rest is up to you. Claire looked at her hands. Part of her wanted to refuse, but another part, the desperate part, the part that needed a chance, wanted to accept. Are you sure? She asked, her voice low. I am, Matthew said firmly. Let me call him today. Claire took a deep breath. All right. Matthew picked up his phone and left the kitchen. Claire heard his voice in the hallway but couldn't make out the words. Leo climbed onto the chair next to her. You're going to get the job, he said confidently. How do you know? Because you're smart. My dad said so. Claire smiled. Your dad said that? He did, last night. He said you were strong and smart, and that everything was going to be okay. Claire felt something clench in her chest, but it was a good clench. Matthew returned a few minutes later. Done, he said. James can see you this afternoon. 3 o'clock. Claire's eyes widened. Today? Today. He said he needs someone urgently. If you do well in the interview, you can start Monday. Claire felt her heart race. She hadn't expected it to be so fast. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Matthew sat down again. Just go there and show them what you can do. Claire nodded nervously. I will, thank you. Seriously, thank you. The rest of the morning passed quickly. Claire went upstairs, chose the most professional outfit she had. Simple black pants and a white shirt. Fixed her hair. Put on light makeup. When she came down, Matthew was already waiting. I'll take you, he said. You don't have to. I can take the subway. I'll take you, he repeated, firm but gentle. The ride was silent. Claire looked out the window, her hands sweaty. The nervousness grew with every block. Matthew parked in front of a modern building downtown. It's here, he said. 10th floor. Ask for James Mitchell. Claire took a deep breath. All right, I can do this. Matthew looked at her. Claire, you'll do great. Just be yourself. She nodded and got out of the car. The reception area was clean, modern. Claire gave her name. The receptionist asked her to wait. 5 minutes later, a man in his 40s appeared, grey hair at the temples, a friendly smile. Claire Donovan. Yes. James Mitchell. Nice to meet you. He extended his hand. Shall we go to my office? Claire followed him down a hallway. The office was spacious with a view of the city. James sat behind his desk. Claire sat in front of him. Matthew told me about you, James began. Claire tried not to look nervous. He was very kind to do that. Matthew doesn't do that for just anyone, James said. So let's get straight to the point. Tell me about your experience. Claire took a deep breath and began. She talked about her previous job, about her responsibilities, about the systems she knew. James asked questions, some technical, others about behavior. Claire answered everything honestly. She talked about the firing, about the absences because of her mother. She didn't hide anything. I understand, James said at the end. And are you ready to come back now? To commit? Yes, Claire said, looking him in the eye. I am. I need this. And I'll give it my best. James was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. All right, let's try it. Claire blinked. What do you mean? You're hired. You start Monday, 8 o'clock. Claire felt her legs go weak. Seriously, seriously. James stood up and extended his hand. Welcome to the team. Claire shook his hand, still in shock. Thank you so much. Matthew trusts you. That's enough for me, James smiled. But now, you need to prove he was right. I will prove it, Claire said, firmly. I promise. When she left the building, Claire was shaking, but it wasn't nerves. It was relief. It was hope. Matthew was leaning against the car, waiting. So? He asked. Claire smiled. A big, real smile. I got it. Matthew smiled too. I knew it. I start Monday. Great. Claire walked toward him, her eyes shining. Matthew, I don't know how to thank you. You changed my life. In just a few days, I just made a call. He interrupted her. The rest was you. You convinced him. You showed him you deserve it. Claire felt her eyes sting. Even so. Thank you for everything. Matthew shrugged. It's what your mother would have done for me. Claire wiped a tear that escaped. She would have. They got into the car. On the way back, Claire looked out the window, but this time the city looked different. It looked possible. She had a job. She had a place to stay. She had people who cared. For the first time since everything fell apart, Claire could see a future. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. And that was enough. When they got home, Leo ran to the door. So, did you get it? Claire knelt in front of him. I did. Leo jumped up and hugged her. I knew it. I said you would. Claire hugged him back, laughing. Matthew watched from afar, leaning against the door. There was something in his gaze, satisfaction, pride, perhaps. He had promised to help her get back on her feet, and he was keeping it, not with money, not with empty favors, but with a real chance, a concrete opportunity. And for Claire, that was everything. She had fallen. She had lost everything. But now she was getting up again, slowly, one step at a time. But she was getting up. And for the first time in a long time, Claire Donovan believed she would succeed, that she would be okay, that the worst was over. And that, in some strange and beautiful way, she had found not just a place to stay, she had found a family that had chosen her, just as she had chosen them. And that, in the end, was what mattered most. It was Saturday afternoon. Claire was in the living room, reading a book she'd found on the shelf. Matthew had gone out to take care of some work things. Leo was on the floor drawing. He had scattered colored pencils everywhere, blank sheets, already drawn sheets. Claire watched him work, tongue sticking out, concentrated, drawing what looked like a dinosaur. What are you drawing? She asked. Leo looked up. A T-Rex. He's the coolest. It's looking very good. Leo smiled, proud, then went back to drawing. They were silent for a few minutes. Claire went back to her book. Leo continued drawing, then Leo stopped, put the pencil aside, looked at Claire. Claire? Yes. Can I ask you something? Claire closed the book. Of course. You can ask. Leo hesitated, looked at his own hands. Are you leaving? Claire blinked. Then what do you mean? When you get money from the new job, are you going to leave? Claire felt her chest tighten. She hadn't thought about it. She hadn't planned that far ahead. I don't know, she answered, honestly. Why? Leo shrugged. Just wanted to know. Claire got up from the sofa and sat on the floor, near him. Leo, what are you thinking? He was quiet for a moment, then he spoke, his voice low. I don't want you to go. Claire felt something clench in her throat. Why not? Leo looked at her, his eyes sincere. Because I like you. Claire smiled, but it was a watery smile. I like you too, Leo. No, Leo shook his head. It's different. I really like you. Like, really a lot. Claire didn't know what to say, she just waited. Leo continued, the words coming out slowly. When you came here, it was different. The house felt different. Better. Better how? Leo thought. More full. You know, it's not just me and my dad. There's you too. And that's cool. Claire wiped away a tear that started to fall. Dice, it's cool for me too, she said. Leo picked up a pencil and started scribbling without looking. My dad is really good. He takes care of me, plays with me, but he works a lot, and sometimes I'm alone. Claire nodded, listening. And you, Leo continued, you're always here. You talk to me, make yummy food, laugh at my jokes. He stopped scribbling and looked at Claire. It's like having a mom. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. The tears came harder now. Leo, I know you're not my mom, he said, quickly. I know I never had a mum. My dad said she left when I was a baby, that she didn't want to stay. Claire clenched her hands. Your dad told you that? He did. He said sometimes people leave, but that it's not my fault, that she just wasn't ready. Leo looked at his own hands. But I always wanted to know what it's like to have a mum. The other kids at school have them. They talk about their mums, what they do together, and I never knew what it was like. Claire moved closer. And now? She asked, her voice low. Leo looked at her. Now I know a little bit, because you're here, and it's good. It's really good. Claire couldn't hold back. She cried. She opened her arms. Come here. Leo went. He hugged her tightly. Claire squeezed him against her chest, feeling her tears fall onto his hair. I miss having a mum, Leo murmured against her. I miss something I never had. Claire kissed the top of his head. I know, she said, her voice choked. I miss my mum too, every day. Leo pulled away slightly, looking at her. But she was good to you, right? She was very good. Then you were lucky. Claire smiled through her tears. I was very lucky. Leo wiped his face. Dad, do you think your mum would like me? Claire held his face with both hands. She would love you, absolutely. Leo smiled. Then he became serious again. Claire, can you stay? Please, don't leave. Claire wiped her own tears. Leo, I don't know what's going to happen, but I promise you as long as I can stay, I will. Okay. Do you promise? I promise. Leo hugged her again, harder this time. Claire closed her eyes and held him, feeling his little heart beat against hers, feeling his trust, his love. She wasn't his mother. Not really. Not by blood. But in that moment, holding him in her arms, she understood. Love doesn't need blood. It doesn't need paper. It doesn't need a title. Love just needs to exist. And what she felt for Leo existed. It was real. It was deep. I really like you, Claire, Leo murmured again. I really like you too, Claire replied. They stayed like that for a while, hugging in the middle of the living room, surrounded by drawings and colored pencils. Claire didn't hear when the door opened. She didn't hear the footsteps, but when she opened her eyes, she saw Matthew standing in the doorway. He was just standing there, watching, his eyes shining. He didn't say anything. He just watched. Claire looked at him. He looked back, and in that look, Claire understood. Matthew felt it too. He saw the bond, saw the connection, saw what was being born there, between her and Leo, between her and them. Matthew gave a half smile, a soft smile, touched. Then he turned and left silently, leaving them there. Leo pulled away from Claire and went back to his drawings, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just poured his heart out. But Claire knew, she knew something had changed. Leo had said what he needed to say. He had opened the door. He had shown what he felt. And Claire had walked in. She had accepted. She had embraced. She couldn't replace the mother he never had. She couldn't erase the emptiness. She couldn't change the past. But she could be present now. She could give affection, attention, presence. She could be something close to what he needed. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Claire stayed there on the floor, watching Leo draw, her heart still racing, her eyes still wet. But for the first time since her mother died, she didn't just feel lost. She felt needed. Someone needed her. Someone wanted her nearby. Someone missed her when she wasn't there. And that gave her purpose. Meaning, Claire Donovan had lost her mother, but maybe in some strange and unexpected way, she had gained a son, not biologically, not legally, but emotionally. And in the end, that's what mattered. Leo held up a new drawing. "Look, I drew you." Claire looked. It was a scribble, barely identifiable. But there was a female figure with yellow hair and big eyes. "Is that me?" she asked, smiling. "It is. You're smiling because you're happy here." Claire felt her eyes sting again. "I am," she said. "I am happy here." And for the first time in a long time, that was true. Claire Donovan was happy. Not completely. Not without pain, not without missing her mother, but happy. Because she had found something she didn't know she was looking for. A family, a place, a home, and a 6-year-old boy who liked her very much. And that, in the middle of all the chaos, was everything. 3 months passed. Claire woke up early every day, had breakfast with Matthew and Leo, went to work, came home in the late afternoon. They had dinner together, talked, laughed. The routine had formed naturally. Without forcing it, without planning it, it just happened. At work, Claire quickly excelled. James praised her performance, trusted her, had already given her 2 extra responsibilities. The salary wasn't huge, but it was enough. Claire had managed to pay off all her old debts. She had saved a little. She had stabilized. And the more stable she became, the more one idea grew in her head. It was time to leave, not because she wanted to, but because it felt right. Matthew and Leo had already done too much. She couldn't occupy their space forever. On a Friday evening, after dinner, Claire asked to talk to Matthew. Leo had gone to sleep. The house was quiet. They sat in the living room. Claire's hands were sweaty. Matthew waited. "Matthew, I need to tell you something," she began. He nodded. "Go ahead." Claire took a deep breath. "I've managed to save enough money. I can rent a small apartment, start over." Matthew didn't say anything. He just looked at her. "I wanted to thank you," Claire continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Die for everything you and Leo have done for me. You saved me. Literally. I don't know where I'd be if it weren't for you." "Claire, let me finish," she pleaded. "Please." Matthew nodded. "You gave me a roof, food, support, affection. You treated me like family when I had no one. And I will never forget that." She wiped away a tear that started to fall. "Thea, but I can't stay here forever. It's not fair to you. You need your house, your life, without a stranger taking up space." "You are not a stranger," Matthew said firmly. "But I'm not real family," Claire replied. "Not by blood, not by paper. I'm just someone you helped." Matthew leaned forward. "Claire, do you really think that?" She didn't answer. "Do you think that in these 3 months you've just been someone we helped?" he continued. "Do you think Leo sees you that way? Do I see you that way?" Claire wiped away more tears. "I don't know. I just know I don't want to abuse your kindness." "It's not kindness," Matthew said. "Not anymore. In the beginning, maybe. But now it's different." "Different how?" Matthew was silent for a moment, choosing his words. "You are part of this house, Claire. You are part of our routine, our life. Leo waits for you to come home from work every day. He asks about you, draws you, tells you stories." He paused. "And I've gotten used to you being here. The conversations at breakfast, the dinners, knowing someone is here when we come home." Claire felt her chest tighten. "Matthew, you are already part of our family," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "And family doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't have a time limit. It doesn't need blood or paper." Claire couldn't hold back. She cried. "I don't want to be a burden." "You are not," Matthew said. "You never were." He stood up and sat beside her on the sofa. "Claire, this is your home too, if you want it to be, for as long as you want." "But—" "No buts," Matthew interrupted her. "You stay or you go, the choice is yours. But know that if you stay, it's not a favor, it's not charity. It's because you belong here." Claire looked at him, her eyes full of tears. "I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything now. Just think about it." At that moment, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Leo appeared in the living room doorway, rubbing his eyes. He was in his pajamas, his hair messy. "Why are you crying?" he asked, confused. Claire quickly wiped her face. "It's nothing, Leo. Go back to bed." "But I heard you talking," Leo approached. "Claire, are you leaving?" Claire looked at Matthew, then at Leo. "I was thinking about—" "No," Leo interrupted her. His voice was firm, decisive. "Don't go." Claire felt her heart break. "Leo, I need to—" "Don't go," he repeated, his eyes filling with tears. "Please, don't go." Leo ran to her and clung to her. He hugged her tightly, burying his face in her shoulder. "You said you would stay. You promised." Claire hugged him back, crying now, and Leo, "I don't want you to go," he sobbed. "I like you here. You're part of us now." Claire looked at Matthew. His eyes were shining too. "Leo is right," Matthew said, his voice soft. "You are part of us, and we don't want you to leave." Leo lifted his tear-stained face. "Stay, Claire, please." Claire held his face with both hands. "Are you sure?" "I am," Leo said firmly. "This is your home too." "Daddy, tell her." Matthew approached. He placed his hand on Claire's shoulder. "He's right. This is your home too, if you want it to be." Claire looked from one to the other, at Leo, with his pleading eyes, at Matthew, with his sincere gaze, and she understood. She understood that she wasn't taking advantage. She wasn't occupying space that wasn't hers. She was occupying a space that had been made for her, a space she had earned, not with money, not with obligation, but with presence, with love, with care. "I'll stay," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll stay." Leo shouted with joy and hugged her tighter. "You promised. You promised." Claire laughed through her tears, hugged Leo, looked at Matthew. He smiled. A warm smile, genuine. "Welcome home," he said. And for the first time since her mother died, Claire felt complete. Not because she had forgotten the pain, not because she had overcome the loss, but because she had found something new, a family that had chosen her, just as she had chosen them. It wasn't the family she was born into. It wasn't the family she planned, but it was the family she had now. And it was perfect just the way it was. Claire Donovan had lost everything, had fallen, had hit rock bottom. But she had gotten up, with the help of a 6-year-old boy who offered to lend his dad, with the help of a man who chose to extend a hand, with the connection that crossed generations, that united past and present. Claire had found not just a place to stay, she had found a home. And now, sitting in that living room, hugged by Leo, watched by Matthew, she knew she was exactly where she should be. It wasn't the end of the pain, it wasn't the end of the missing her mom, but it was the beginning of something new, something good, something worthwhile. And as Leo fell asleep on her lap, and Matthew brought a blanket to cover them, Claire closed her eyes, and she smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, she was home. Truly, home. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.